Iraq, Turkey, and Iran. Iraq. Iraq lies in the Fertile Crescent, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, where the ancient civilizations of Mesopotamia were established. Ancient cities such as Nineveh, and Babylon were located here. Iraq is mainly desert, but near the two major rivers, the Euphrates and Tigris, are fertile alluvial plains. An alluvial plain is a mostly flat landform created by sediment deposits from one or many rivers. Most of Iraq has a hot, arid climate. Rainfall during the summer is extremely rare, except in the far north of the country. The northern mountainous regions have cold winters with occasional heavy snows, sometimes causing extensive flooding. Present-day Iraq and Kuwait were established out of the British Mandate territory gained following Britain's defeat of the Turkish Ottoman Empire. Britain established straight-line political boundaries between Iraq and Jordan, Syria, and Saudi Arabia. These type of boundaries are called geometric boundaries because they do not follow any physical features. In 1961, when Britain withdrew from the region, the emir controlling the southern region bordering the Persian Gulf requested that Britain separate his oil-rich kingdom as an independent country. This country became Kuwait, and the rest of the region became Iraq. After a series of governments in Iraq, the Ba'ath Party came to power, paving the way for Saddam Hussein to gain power in 1979. In 1980, a disagreement arose over the Shatt al-Arab waterway in the Persian Gulf on the border between Iraq and Iran, and the feud led to war between the two countries. The people of Iran are not Arabs. Their ethnic background is Persian. Most Iranians are Shia Muslims. Saddam Hussein and his Ba'ath parties were Arabs and Sunni Muslims. Ethnic and religious differences thus fueled the conflict. The Shatt al-Arab waterway was quickly filled with wrecked ships. The local battle escalated into an all-out war, which ended in 1988 without anyone declaring victory. The Iran-Iraq War was as close to World War III as the world has ever gotten, with more than 1 million casualties and a cost of more than $100 billion. World powers aligned themselves with one side or the other. Before the war, Iranian government had been taken over by Islamic fundamentalists who opposed the U.S. intervention in the region. Therefore, in the Iran-Iraq War, the United States supported Hussein and provided him with industrial supplies and materials. After the Iran-Iraq War, Saddam Hussein looked to Kuwait to gain new oil wealth and expand access to the Persian Gulf. By taking over Kuwait, Iraq would gain an excellent port on the Persian Gulf and earn more income from oil reserves. Hussein accused Kuwait of slant drilling oil wells along the Iraqi border and removing oil that was legally Iraq's. It was common knowledge that both sides were engaged in this practice, but it was the excuse that Hussein needed to invade Kuwait and reclaim it as the 19th province of Iraq. In 1990, the Iraqi military invaded and occupied Kuwait. Though the world community opposed this action, it was not until Hussein nationalized all the oil assets of the international oil corporations that resistance was organized. Under the leadership of U.S. President George H.W. Bush, the United Nations organized a military coalition to remove Hussein from Kuwait. On January 16, 1991, Operation Desert Storm began. After 45 days of fighting, Iraq was overwhelmingly defeated and its military was ousted from Kuwait. This was a major victory for the coalition. When it became evident that Hussein would lose Kuwait, his forces dynamited all the oil facilities and set all the oil wells in Kuwait on fire. His position was that if he couldn't have the oil, then nobody would. This was one of the worst environmental catastrophes regarding oil on record. Oil flowed into the Persian Gulf and covered the water's surface up to 3 feet thick. Most mammals, birds, and organisms living in the water's surface died. Oil flowed out onto the desert sand and into large petroleum lakes. The air pollution caused by burning oil wells dimmed the sun and caused serious health problems. Ethnic and cultural divisions. To keep Iraq from breaking apart after Operation Desert Storm, coalition forces allowed Hussein to remain in power. Ethnically and religiously, Iraq is divided into three primary groups that generally do not get along. Sunni Arabs dominate the central Iraq, in a region often referred to as the Sunni Triangle, which includes the three cities of Baghdad, Trinit, which is Hussein's hometown, and Ramadi. And I said the wrong name. It's Tikrit, not whatever I said. Baghdad, Tikrit, and Ramadi. Sunnis were the most loyal to the Hussein government. Southeastern Iraq is dominated by Arabs, who follow the Shia division of Islam, which is also followed by most of Iran's population. A group that is ethnically Kurdish and follows the Sunni division dominates northern Iraq. Kurds are not Arabs or Persians. Rather, they originate from somewhere in northern Europe centuries ago with their own religion, language, and customs. Many have converted to Islam. Hussein was a Sunni Muslim, and when he was in power, he kept the other two groups in check. He used chemical weapons on the Kurds during the Iran-Iraq War. In 1988, he used chemical weapons on the Kurdish town of Halabja, and killed about 10% of the 80,000 people who lived there. Thousands of Kurds died in other attacks, and thousands more continued to suffer serious health threats. After Operation Desert Storm, Hussein pushed the Kurds north until the UN and the United States restricted him at the 36th parallel, which became a security zone for the Kurds. The Arab Shia population in the south often clashed with Hussein's military in an attempt to gain more political power, and Hussein subjected them to similar harsh conditions and treatment. The Arab Shia population in the southeast makes up most of the Iraqi people. The two main cities of Karbala and Najif contain holy sites for Shia followers worldwide. The Shia population is 3 times larger than the Kurdish population in Iraq. More Kurds live outside Iraq than live in Iraq. The Kurds are the largest nation of people in the world without a country. About 25 million Kurds live in the Middle East, and most, about 14 million, live in Turkey. About 8 million Kurds live in Iran, and about 7 million live in Iraq. A few others live in neighboring countries. At the 1945 conference to the UN, they petitioned to have their own country called Kurdistan, carved out of Iran, Iraq, and Turkey, but they were denied. The Iraq War, 2003 to 2011. After the September 11th, 2001 attack on the United States, there was a renewed interest in weapons of mass destruction. Knowing that Hussein had used chemical weapons on the Kurds, Iranians, and Shia, there was a concern that he would use them again. UN weapons inspectors in Iraq could never confirm that Hussein retained weapons of mass destruction. They had been destroyed, moved out of Iraq, or hidden. U.S. President George W. Bush decided to invade Iraq in 2003 to remove Hussein from power. In the invasion, Hussein's 2 sons were killed and Hussein was captured. One aspect of the invasion plan was to use Iraq's vast oil reserves to help pay for the cost of the war, which quickly ballooned to more than $1 billion a week. Fundamentalist Islam insurgents made the war difficult. The U.S. invasion of Iraq brought about the removal of the Ba'ath Party from power, and Iraq came under a military occupation by a multinational coalition. An Iraqi interim government was formed that assumed sovereignty in 2004. A new constitution was drafted and approved by vote of the Iraqi people. Elections were held, and a new government was formed under the newly drafted constitution. Occupying troops continued to increase in violence that peaked in about 2007. By 2010, the combat operations by occupying troops were ending, and the country worked to sustain stable political conditions. Excuse me for skipping words. Turkey. Turkey is the only remaining country in the vast Ottoman Empire, which ruled the region for 700 years. When the empire was at its peak in the 16th and 17th centuries, it controlled parts of Europe, North Africa, the Middle East, and Arabia. Located on the Bosphorus, the straits that connect the Black Sea with the Mediterranean, the ancient city of Constantinople was the capital of the Ottoman Empire. Called Istanbul today, this city is the largest in Turkey, but it's not the current capital. Turkey moved its capital to Ankara on the Anatolian Plateau, which is centrally located in Turkey. Turkey has a small portion of its land area on the western side of the Bosphorus to claim its connection to Europe. Most of Turkey's land area is a part of the Asian continent, and Turkey has often been referred to as Asia Minor. Mountains on Turkey's eastern border with Armenia include Mount Ararat, which is the highest peak in the country at 16,946 feet in elevation. The Bible says that Mount Ararat was the resting place of Noah's Ark. Genesis 8, verses 3 through 4. The waters receded steadily from the earth, and after 150 days the waters had gone down. On the 17th day of the 7th month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. Turkey is the homeland of many plants that have been cultivated for food since the advent of agriculture, and the wild ancestors of many plants that now provide staples for humankind still growing in the area. Several wild species of tulips are native to this region's mountains, and the flower was first introduced to Western Europe with species taken from the Ottoman Empire in the 16th century. Turkey has an amazing ecosystem with over 80,000 animal species. It is also where various domesticated animals originate from, like the Anatolian shepherd, the Turkish Angora cat, and the Angora rabbit. The people of Turkey are neither Arab nor Persian. They're Turkish, and they speak the Turkish language. In the remote mountains of northern Turkey, some of the people communicate great distances by using a language called Kus Dili, which I'm pretty sure I pronounced wrong. As much as 90% of the Turkish population is Sunni Muslim, which is similar to many other Muslim countries in the Middle East. Turkey is an established secular democracy with a democratically elected political leadership. To maintain its democracy, it has had to deal with Islamic fundamentalists who have often supported a shift to an Islamic religious state. Turkey has also had to negotiate with its neighbors, Syria and Iraq, over the water rights to the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, which originate in Turkey but flow through to other countries. Turkey has built dams on these rivers, much to the dismay of its neighbors who want to use more of the water. Turkey borders northern Iraq and was home to 56 million Turks and 14 million Kurds as of 2010. The Kurdish claim of a homeland in eastern Turkey has not been recognized by the Turkish government. Open rebellion has been expressed by Kurdish groups wishing to become independent of Turkey, but the Turkish government has opposed any movement toward independence. Most Kurds have migrated to Istanbul in search of work. They live and work in Istanbul and send money back to their families in eastern Turkey. The large city of Diyarbakir in eastern Turkey is predominantly Kurdish and is considered by many Kurds as the city that would be their capital if they had their own country of Kurdistan. Turkey has a very diverse culture, and their cuisine varies across the country. The Black Sea region uses lots of fish. The southeast is famous for its variety of kebabs. Istanbul inherited many elements of the Ottoman court cuisine, and yogurt is an important element of Turkish cooking. Cyprus. Cyprus is the third largest island in the Mediterranean Sea, after the Indian islands of Sicily and Sardinia. The island is separated by the Green Line, monitored by the UN, which divides the Greek-dominated south from the Turkish-dominated north. The two sides have been separated since the Civil War in 1974. Turkish groups in the north have declared their half of the island the independent Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. Turkey is only one country that recognizes this problem. The rest of the world considers the whole island the Republic of Cyprus. Cyprus suffers from a chronic shortage of water. The country relies heavily on rain to provide household water, but in the past 30 years, average yearly precipitation has decreased. Cyprus has two official languages, Greek and Turkish, but 80% of Cypriots, people from Cyprus, can speak English, and it's featured widely on road signs, probably because it was the official language during the British colonial rule and was used in courts of law and legislation as late as 1996. An example of Cyprus food is cauliflower. Botanists from the 12th and 13th centuries claimed the vegetable came from Cyprus originally, and cauliflower used to be known in Europe as Cyprus cabbage. There was also long and extensive trade in cauliflower's seeds from Cyprus until well into the 16th century. Iran covers a physical area larger than the United States state of Alaska. It is a land of mountains and deserts. Iran's central and eastern regions are mainly desert with few inhabitants, and the northern and western regions of the country are mountainous. The Elburz Mountains, also known as Alborz Mountains, in the north, around the Caspian Sea, reach as high as 18,000 feet in elevation near the capital of Tehran. The Zagros Mountains run along the border with Iraq and the Persian Gulf for more than 900 miles, and they can reach elevations greater than 14,000 feet. Similar to the Atlas Mountains in the Maghreb, Iran's mountains trap moisture, allowing minor agricultural activities in the valleys. Most of Iran's population lives in cities along the mountain ranges. Qanats, a system of shafts or wells dug along mountain slopes, bring water from the mountain to the valleys for irrigation and domestic use. Iran was once the center of the Persian Empire, which had its origins as far back as 648 BCE, and the country was called Persia until about 1935. The ethnic triangle of the Middle East consists of Persians in Iran, Turks in Turkey, and Arabs in Arabia. Most of the 70 million people in Iran are Persian. Iran has a long history with the ancient Persian Empire and the various conquering armies that followed it. During the rise of Islam, Iran had major contributions to the arts, mathematics, literature, philosophy, and science. The highly advanced carpet weaving traditions from centuries past are but one example of the advancements in design and the technical expertise of the people. The country's Persian identity and culture continued throughout the centuries under different ruling powers. The Persian language remains and is a branch of the Indo-European language family. Arabic is widely used as a second language and a language used in science, which was helpful in reaching a broader audience and reaching out to the regional community with its academic and scientific findings. In 1971, Iran celebrated the 2500th anniversary of Persia's first monarchy. The monarchy was ruled by a slash, which is a title for the sovereign leader in Iran, similar to a king. The Shah's royal family ruled from 1923 to 1979, when Islamic fundamentalists took control of the government. It was during this revolution on November 4th, 1979, that Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, who had previously been exiled by the Shah, urged Iranians to oppose U.S. activities in Iran. Iranian students stormed the U.S. embassy. They took U.S. citizens hostage. 52 Americans were held for 444 days during the U.S. presidency of Jimmy Carter. The hostages were released the day that U.S. President Ronald Reagan took office. Khomeini indicated that he had not been aware of the students' plan, but supported it. This is one reason the United States backed Saddam Hussein in the Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s. Khomeini ruled Iran until his death in 1989. Since then, Iran has been an Islamic state with an Ayatollah as the supreme leader. An Ayatollah is a high-ranking Shia cleric that is an expert in the Islamic faith, and the Sharia, which is the Muslim code of law based on the Quran. Approximately 90% of Iran's population follows the Shia division of Islam. Iran is at a crossroads in the conflict between conservative Islamic fundamentalists and Islamic reformers. The government the government of the Islamic State is controlled by Muslim clerics who tend to be more conservative in their rulings. But the young people are mainly on the side of the democratic reformers. Young people are becoming more familiar with Western culture. For example, the unofficial holiday of Valentine's Day has become extremely popular in Iran and is celebrated by a large sector of the population, mainly young people. In an effort to curb the influence of Western culture, on February 13th, 2001, the government of Iran officially banned all symbols or activities associated with Valentine's Day. Let me read that again. On February 13th, 2011, the government of Iran officially banned all symbols or activities associated with Valentine's Day. One claim was that the day was named after a Christian martyr, and therefore it wasn't supportive of Islam.